thank you for coming to the panel for the hospitality investments in times of global crisis. I'm joined here by Mr. David Jenkins from Radisson Hotel Group, by Mr. Christian Michael from Wyndham Hotel Group, and by Mr. Andrej Sovrovic from Delta Holding Group. First of all, let's try to define what a global crisis is, since it's a very ambiguous term, and over the last few years we had several. So we went through a COVID crisis, which was especially important for the hospitality sector and has affected all, I believe, all countries and all sectors of the hospitality industry. And then afterwards we had a global financial crisis, which is still unfolding. And in the meantime, we have a war crisis in Europe, which is also affecting global trends. So in terms of hospitality, all of these have had different effects on the hospitality industry. And first of all, we would like to see with our guests what has their experience been over the past few years, what they have learned, and basically how they have gotten better in moving forward. I will start from Mr. Andrej Sovrovic. With Delta Group, they have several investments in several asset classes, not only hospitality, but with retail and with offices. How has the hospitality sector performed over the last few years in terms of other sectors, and how they see it moving forward?
Thanks, Uroš. Well, yeah, it's crisis after crisis after crisis, and in these times, the diversification of our portfolio has helped quite a lot. So offices were performing more or less steadily despite people working from home, and then shopping malls were on and off, and then hotels were the most affected. What's been probably a common or a result of all these crises is, in my opinion, the challenges we are seeing with the people and the stances it has left on hospitality industry in the first place. This is the key topic that we are looking to tackle at the moment, and to give the people perspective and the belief that there is a future in the industry and in the whole real estate as well. In this regard, we've seen that the diversification of our portfolio has done well, and this has not been so much the case in the hotels, because in the past years we have focused solely on the city hotels and mostly with solely one operator. So the similar model that we, in a broader term, wanted to do in other segments, we will be looking forward in the next years to diversify our portfolio, not only to the city properties, but also maybe to the resorts or something else. So both diversity in the countries. We are at the moment present in Slovenia and Serbia, and also in terms of destination. And again, it also connects to this people question, because we do need to give our people perspective, our people potential, and the room to move, room to grow. So yeah, I believe on the one hand it was very tough in the past years, and on the other side it gave us valuable lessons, and honestly we became to some extent even resilient to all the news which are coming today, which is okay, because now new crisis news are old news for us, and hopefully we'll be moving forward better in the future.
I think the term crisis is no longer applies. Basically, a crisis lasts for a few months, and now over the last 3 years, this is just normal operating, basically standards for us.
Exactly. Yes, when I was driving yesterday, I was really thinking what crisis we are talking about mostly, and definitely it is a permanent now, and also it has redefined the periods that we are talking about. So the short, mid, and long term were completely redefined in the past years. So now we are speaking about everything has got shorter. We've got more impatient, and this is the world we live in, and we have to accept it. So hopefully there are valuable lessons out of all these crises.
Thank you. And Christian, Wyndham has over 9,000 properties under management and under franchise, basically in their portfolio. How have you been able to channel the last few years with your investors? Basically, what most important lessons have you learned, and has there been any more resilient areas in the world, basically, that have been able to navigate better the last few years, basically in terms of the challenges that we spoke about?
Hello, everyone. Great to be here in Belgrade. First of all, I think it's a very vast questions, but if I try to answer, of course, I think especially with the COVID, because I'm doing the development for the last 19 years for Wyndham, and I remember myself being in positions, like you say, being patient or impatient, in development you need to be patient, because I was handling different countries at different times, and you have the elections, so you know that nothing is moving in Turkey for 3-4 months because people are waiting. And then we went to a serious crisis, financial crisis, and all that. And I think COVID really hit us a lot and changed drastically the way the company was looking at business, and it impacted us. And I would say, yes, now it started again, different crises, the war in Ukraine. It affected different regions again, and some regions are benefiting out of that crisis. I was recently in Poland, and we were talking about development on the border of Ukraine, and where a lot of people were seeing a lot of opportunities on the long term, not just now, because now it's full, but on the long term, because they saw that after this crisis, all the redevelopment of Ukraine will come from that angle. So I think, just to make it short, yes, it's true that the resort did better, went faster. We had brands in the MICE segment like Dolce, where it was really a struggle, because it was really designed, purpose-built on mice, and very large, extensive mice. And there it's back. It started with local conferences like this one, I would say, in different places. But I must admit that the best performing brands were the economy brands that we had in Europe, where we had Super 8 in Germany that did fantastically well. It was easy to operate. I think you are more agile, you can react differently, you don't impact the service to the client. And I think everyone had to adapt, and with what we did with our franchise and managed hotel, but mainly franchise, where we gave them solutions, ideas, and brainstorm how best they could basically pass the different scenarios.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And David, for you, a similar question. Basically, I know that Radisson over the last few years has had a lot of course, faced a lot of the same challenges that other operators and other management companies have faced. But also during the war in Ukraine and Russia, you had a special opportunity, basically, of operating some hotels in Russia as one of the last remaining international operators in the country. Maybe don't leave with that question.
Okay. Hello. Nice to be in Belgrade, talking about the Balkans, not Russia. Okay. Yeah. I'd rather not discuss Russia, to be honest, yeah. But, you know, yes, we are still there, managing but not developing. Yeah, as with some other esteemed operators who are also in the room. So the question was? Sorry.
So let me do a different question then. How have the priorities shifted basically since the COVID crisis and now the global financial crisis in terms of area developments? Like Christian was talking about, maybe some sectors were better performing and have basically a natural lead towards new developments, basically, and new opportunities.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think, as we all know, I mean, the crisis is come and go. I mean, I've been at Radisson for 8 years, and this is probably my third or fourth in 8 years in one company. Prior to that, consulting, and I still remember the global financial crisis when Greece was falling apart, Italy was falling apart, Spain was falling apart. And I look today at Radisson's development strategy, and 3 of our biggest markets would be Greece, Italy, and Spain. So things do turn around, and some things take longer than you would like, but you never write anything off. Certainly, as one door closes, another door always opens. And as a company, we have to grow, we have to develop, we have targets, we have owners, like everybody who wants to grow. How we grow, where we grow, and what we grow with is always what changes. I can repeat, of course, resorts. Certainly, prior to 4 or 5 years ago, I may have signed 1 resort every 2 years. Now I'm signing 1 resort every 3 deals. That's just in my region. So that's really shows a huge difference in A, the market demand for resorts, B, the demand for branded resorts of all segments, and C, in our company's view on resorts to embrace it and either managed or franchised. We also probably spent a lot more time looking into the service apartments, branded residential, which works with and without resorts. It does work with them, but not exclusively. We're also looking at urban serviced apartments, which can be for sale or not for sale. These are areas that are helping investors to get financing in place as well, so that also helps. So I think through the last few years, we've developed a different strategy on geographies, a big focus on Greece, a big focus on Albania, a strong refocus on the Balkans. We're looking at Romania with particular interest at the moment due to the number of second cities in that country compared to maybe other Balkan countries where they don't maybe have as much secondary city development. On top of which, our operations are getting more nimble. We've all, I think every operator now understands what break-even point is after COVID. Before then, I think we assumed we knew. Maybe we had some consultants telling us what it was, some financial director telling us what it was. We know now because we had to do it. And not just us, but our peer group as well. That helps us to be more nimble, especially in the face of a staffing crisis.
When talking about a staffing crisis, for you, Andre, basically, we know that the local markets have been especially plagued with lack of employment, but this has been a trend now in most of Europe. What do you see it moving forward, and how we're able, basically, or and you as an operator, are able to overcome these issues moving forward, basically?
Not an easy one, definitely, and probably it was ours, the industry is too harsh of a reaction to a crisis, especially here. I mean, if you're driving theoretically on an ice and you put a brake really hard, then you won't get the effect. You'll keep turning and turning and turning, and I believe that's what happened to the industry a couple of years ago. And then other industries which were much more basically where the situation was much more applicable, used the situation, and we definitely lost track. So at the moment, in the whole region, so not only in Serbia, but the whole region, I believe that our industry is especially salary uncompetitive. Then we are also facing the basically unequal standards compared to some other players in the market. You have a situation where all the operators or the owners of the hotels are doing a really true job in not hiding anything, where we face also a competition which is unreliable, meaning that it's a matter of the gray economy as well. So it's really not the same game. How to move forward? Well, I believe there are two sides of a story. One, and definitely the one which is the easier one and where we already started working in, is the importing of the workforce. So at the moment, usually in the back of the houses, you're having people from third world countries, and so far the whole region, most of the region has been quite understanding in providing the visas and the papers, but there have also been some controversies. So this process, I cannot be sure that this process will go as easy as possible in the future years, because there is also political sentiment to it. But more importantly, we need to make more plans for our people, make more kind of believing in them, showing them how beautiful the industry is, how much they can grow. I mean, there is no industry where you have more beautiful examples from people starting at the very basic position, finishing not only as a GMs, but even higher in hierarchies of our countries. But then again, it comes to the patience of the people as well. And it's also usually when people see my age, they're like, "Hey, what does your generation look for?" And I'm really struggling to give the answer. And to some extent, I'm ashamed to speak about my generation being one of them and not knowing what motivates one of my peers. So we really need to engage in knowing today what people are looking for, what motivates them, how they see a short, medium, and long-term perspective, and working. Certainly, we need to work on the payroll as well. And of course, if we are only to work on that, then the owners won't be happy and we won't be sitting here today. So it's a matter of moving the industry forward in the markets. And I think really in the past year and hopefully in the future we'll be seeing the rise of the Balkans in terms of the pricing. This is really, in my opinion, the cornerstone of all the future positive changes, because if we are to continue on a low levels, then we'll be, only looking for our trail and we won't be moving forward. So definitely a wide but also deep approach, and listening to our people and trying to make the most for them.
Thank you. I would like to get back to you with one more question, which is twofold, and it will lead into questions for Christian and for David. Basically, the financial crisis which came after the COVID crisis, it doesn't hit all the countries at the same time, the same way, but it has resulted in an increase in interest rates and a little bit more risk-averse approach from the banks in terms of financing new projects, especially basically city hotels in a lot of Southeastern Europe. What is your expectation in terms of support and then risk mitigation tools that you expect from international, from hotel operators in pitching a project to a bank or developing a project with the bank?
I think David already touched on this, and all or most of the new projects which are coming in the regions are mostly mixed projects. So standalone hotels at the moment probably are tougher to get away with the banks, and usually this combination between residence and the hotel, or the service apartments and the hotel, is the one being the best combination for the banks at the moment. So the equity is troublesome at the moment, and then the interest rates for the credits as well. So what we were looking in the future for the first time, especially for our new projects, is in the similar way as David mentioned. So trying to shortcut this with kind of mixed use, either or even a full combination of office, resi, and the hotel. So simple decision is as it is. We've seen it, I think 12 or 15 years ago, the similar trend. We know it's going to pass, but of course we don't know how much it will stay. At the moment, the situation is quite unfavorable. We are seeing still the ECB and the Fed increasing the banks. Okay, the Fed made one stop, but still it hasn't transferred to Europe. So we need to be careful and look for diversified projects in order to make them work.
And Christian, how does and what role does innovation and technology play in shaping the investments opportunities in the hotel industry? And how are you able to utilize basically the technology aspect in the operational aspect for the hotels, for new hotels?
I think we discussed about that during the lunch, because it was on another panel. And my view is that we did not change a lot in our industry. Still a lot of manpower, and it relates again back to the problem of the staff. Of course, we have developed brands, especially in the economy segment, that were tailored to be really efficient when you operate them. And it's why it was really a success. When you develop it from the beginning, when you look at every single angle on constructions, on costs, that you don't really lose all the time half of a panel because you decided that you want to have it magnificent, but you can do something nice. So I think it's all about that. We had the discussions, and I think before that we have specifications on 5-star, 4-star that are not everywhere the same in Europe. They are all different, with the exception, I think, of 4 countries. And it's true that you need to offer sometimes services to qualify to be a 4-star, a 4-star superior, a 3-star. And sometimes it's not what the clients are looking for, or it will impact the sustainability and the way we go forward. So I think it's a complicated questions. On the staffing itself, just to go back a little what you just said, is that it's true that the new generations, and we see that more and more article about that in Central Europe, where people are saying, or you see some companies trying to implement 4 days work or do things differently. Because of course, if you are a chef and you come in the morning and then afternoon you have this kind of break and then you need to come back, maybe if you want to have a kind of life that is more balanced, maybe you need to organize the shift differently and work differently. And I think it's all about us trying to find mechanism around the way it make it interesting for the young people, because some of them, for them, it's not vital that they will get a lot of money, but they want to have a certain time for themselves to do what they like to do. It could be sport or different things. And now there is examples of hotels who are doing that. They ask them to work a little longer. They work 4 days and everyone is happy. So longer hours eventually, 4 days or part-time or... So there is ways, and I think it's our industry that need to be a little open and trying to find solutions with the HR team.
Basically.
Flexibility for them to choose what they want and when they want there. I mean, salary is also one of the scenarios. With Wyndham also, we have created a new divisions because we saw that during that crisis, we started as a franchisor to offer services like a management company, just for that. So we have now a few people who are able to help you to hire staff, to give you some specific training, to do team buildings, like if you would have an HR, but you are not necessarily qualified, but you want more support. So we have an a la carte services on that one. So there is a few things that we created for on that angle, basically to support the industry, our franchisee, our managed hotel, with dedicated service that we didn't had a few years ago.
Excellent. And in your experience, has one of the panels before, they were mentioning how what we need to do, I mean, for Serbia and the region, is educate also investors and also the government in support. But that angle for me is especially important in terms of educating investors, because especially when negotiating with international operators, their expectations, especially because it's not the same as other asset classes. A hotel is a living organism. Basically, it needs constant care from the investors, from the operators, especially for the employees, but also for the guests at the hotel. Has your experience changed over the last few years, and has the investors themselves, have they grown more acquainted with investing in hotels, or basically is it the same type of institutional investors that are only looking at the bottom line at the end of the day?
I think the main challenge is when you have local banks trying to finance a product or a project, or hotel project, and they are not qualified. I mean, they have no experience. You see that the questions who are coming. So of course it helps when David, myself are coming and explaining again and trying. What we do these days is, because we do mainly franchise here in the regions, we have white label operators. Some people are ready to come and lease in the market, Romania or this part of the world. If the hotel would make sense, they would operate. They are working in different regions with us. We would support them with key money. In some occasions, we are looking at supporting a normal management agreement with some guarantees and creating a fund to basically start up a little the process, because the question is that the white label operator is saying, I'm going there, but I'm not ready to place 200, 300,000, 400,000 there, but with our key money, we place it there. And then the banks start to feel a little relaxed because they understand that there is a commitment from the brand and for specific project, and the people in our company understand that to secure a project. And we are working now currently on a project in Zadar where it's in front of the cruise terminal, so it's a different business. There is the parking lot development behind that with that, so the developers, they can look at a mixed-use development that it's not exactly what we do, but I personally like when you have a hospital or you have a shopping mall and then they add a hotel, and a lot of times we can then explain to the investors the benefit of developing a selected service without F&B offers. As an example, if you are beside the shopping mall, or the long stay with a hospital, because in this part of the world people tend to travel with the people to go to hospital, and we have some very good example also in Turkey and in this part of the world where it's very successful. And then you need to design the product and tailor it with the rest of the platform.
Excellent. And David, Radisson was fairly successful in expanding the brand in the region, in Serbia, in regional countries. What have been the biggest challenges for you, basically, and has the investor communication have been improved over the last few years? Have they been more knowledgeable in terms of what they need, what they're asking for, evaluating basically the business plan and communicating with you and the banks?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, in this part of the world, and this is what I enjoy, actually. I enjoy being in this part of the world because, you're not really dealing with pension funds and REITs and guys in suits behind a panel of bankers looking at, cap rates and investment returns, which is very important. But you're dealing with family members very often. You're dealing with individuals. You're dealing with many, many investors whose primary investment is not hotel, but they're very successful in whichever business they're in, be it retail, be it automotive, be it pharma, be it, we have a variety of people from clothing companies to logistics to what have you, and they're moving into hospitality. And I find that fascinating to work with people. Yes, it could be a challenge at the beginning because there is maybe a knowledge lack. And as Christian said as well, with the banking side of it as well, can be a challenge. But, you know, I find the success that you gain together through that is very fulfilling because you're actually there together all the way through, and it's much more emotional ride and journey than perhaps it would be with a REIT in Berlin. Yeah, that's changing. I mean, obviously, you know, we have our huge Radisson Blu in Bucharest, which was purchased by a fund. So we're dealing with a fund. We have some other hotels that are maybe more fund-driven these days in the region. So that is definitely going to change. If we look at like Hungary, you know, that market there in Budapest is pretty much now funds and private equity and Polish companies coming in with lease-driven deals. It will edge into this market. And as Christian also said, we are seeing opportunities here to lease with third-party operators. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a couple of things now in Romania for that. So that will change, but I think the fundamental investor profile in this region is still very much a family-driven business. I say, but it is, of course, developing.
I think as much it is better from an emotional standpoint because it is personal, it is a direct investment. It can be sometimes frustrating because their expectations in terms of returns are maybe more stressful with private individuals, basically, or some smaller companies.
I think it's important to be honest from day one. I mean, as it is in any business, let's be honest. You're not going in to sign the deal and leave them for the next 20 years alone. Be it a franchise or a managed, you have to be open at the very beginning of the process. That's certainly our approach, and I'm sure it is with everyone in this market. If we don't, we're trying to, over the last few years, we've taken our average room size down. If we can do Radissons at 21 square meters, we're doing Radisson Blues at 26, 27. There was a time maybe 10 years ago they were all getting bigger. It's got to be 36 square meters. It's got to be 42 square meters. You've got to have 3 restaurants. You've got to have the swimming pool. We, as well as the market, have been trying to reduce the investment per key for owners, investors, to try and help them to you don't need to put too much FF&E in there. You don't need to overbuild. And if we're there at the beginning helping those owners to understand their build cost, the specs, we lease a lot of hotels, we know what the FF&E cost actually is. So we're able to help them with that as well, and be open with the numbers, be open with the expectations. And yes, we can come in with key money in the right situations, guarantees, thresholds. Everyone has the same toolkit, but it's just being honest. Don't just win the deal and leave them alone, but be there from the beginning and then be there at the end as well.
Thank you. And for Andre, in terms of basically relationship with a potential management company in the future, in these aspects, how important is it to be flexible, especially in the initial few years from the operator standpoint, in terms of course, brand adherence after operations, and navigating that with the local or the local regulations and also local practice?
Very important. I mean, I can really confirm everything what David said in terms of how important for the operator is to understand the local market and also the specific investment, because not all the plots are the same, not all the owners are the same at the end of the day, as Christian said, so they are completely different owners. Some of them just put the money in there and expect and look at the P&L once a year. If it's delivering, that's it. But in this region especially, the owners are mostly not like this. They think they have the local knowledge, which probably they do, not in the hospitality segment probably, but they do have it. They're in touch with mentality, local authorities, and in this relationship between the operator and the investor, probably a lot good can happen. In order to do so, the operator needs to understand it as well as the investor. This doesn't mean that we should interfere in each other's responsibilities, but that we should be more flexible than the model itself is, especially for the managed properties. Because let's play on each other's advantages and let's make this 1 + 1 not even equal 2, but even more than this. I am of the opinion that the operators, firstly, are much more learning about the region. It's great what we are seeing in terms of the number of the both companies and the brands in the region, and it helps all market elevate in a way. So what we as a country needed heavily 20 years ago, 10 years ago less, and we still need a lot, is knowledge. This knowledge is the key what the operator is bringing us. It's usually especially the local people, so what we need is the guidance, the tools, the complete HR process in order, in my opinion, for the process to work.
Excellent. And do we have any questions from the audience? I think we've talked about some very interesting topics here. We have a few more questions that we shared before, but I want to say that we have, I think, answered a lot of the topics questions. I would just like to see if with Christian, have you tailored any strategies differently after all these events, but in general, after your experience and performance of your clients in the future? Basically, is it only what we spoke about in terms of turning more towards resort than MISA, or are there any other differences and basically, or suggestions you have for the investors once you're going into new projects?
I think with the crisis, we have developed new brands for resorts. It came in the US, Ultra All-Inclusive for resort, that was new. We have developed also, like we just discussed with David, the residence product, extended stay in the city, but also in the resort to do mixed use, so with Wyndham Grand Residences, Wyndham Ramada Residences, and that really also helped a lot, and we have some very strong development in Central Asia, but also in Turkey, also in this part of the world. And that was basically the exercise we did on that kind of product development. But now if you look at and I think where you need to be agile, because if your business model is new construction in Germany or Central Europe, and there is no new constructions because the people are not basically doing new developments and they are waiting as a developer, and because we just mentioned that we have all our targets, and when you work for American companies, it's better that you basically succeed on a regular basis, otherwise it could be a quick exercise, let's say. You need to go back to conversion. And we discuss about that. It's not just conversions on it, and sometimes I like to do conversions, but you can really see an old product that again is coming to life with a new concept, with a new restaurant concept, maybe a spa or change of area that make it totally sense because it was too big before. You can shrink the kitchen and do something different and make it more lively or upscale or change directly the brand and do something different. So that's, I think, something good. Something I wanted to say, because we had these discussions before, and he was trying to tell me that the hotel was never the right investment compared to the different asset class. And I must agree with him, because when you are developers, you have to sit and listen to these fund managers telling you that for years, you know. I mean, just recently, they discovered that the hotel are doing quite okay in a way because of the crisis. And some of the asset classes start to be well covered. I think logistic and office, you have mentioned that. It's not really, sometimes you wonder if you have too many, or it's not well occupied, or the tenants are shrinking their offices like we did ourselves. But I think with the hotel, what we did not mention, and now it struck me when I was on stage, is that I had a few owners that were exactly what we discussed before. In this part of the world, we have private owners that are very successful in their own business. In Turkey, I think we have more than 100 hotels. If I would add all of them, I think I can recreate a small world, because some guys are in distributions of logistic or cars or constructions or textile, whatever. all these guys are very successful, and then their friends is doing a hotel, they need to move their factory, and then they are doing a hotel. And they like our Ramada brands mainly there. But one or two of these guys told me, you cannot imagine how it changed my life. And it's true. Imagine that you have a logistics center. You cannot invite your friends to your logistics centers. It's difficult, let's say. You would be surprised, so it's a short visit of half an hour, and the guy is looking at, is the same for an office, and we are not talking about parking, because this is quite silly. Yeah. But the hotel, some people told me, you cannot imagine, when we did this hotel, Christian, it changed my life. He was a construction company in Turkey, trying to, and in big infrastructure, so bridges, roads, and everything. He was not being paid by the government, or late, let's say, because they were not really pushing. Since he had the hotel, he could entertain, bring people, show them around, offer them a lunch, offer a room for some of their friends. It changed their life drastically. And it's true that when we say we enjoy what we are doing, because I come from the operation, it's an industry that is quite particular. And it's something that you can showcase, something that sometimes we have problems with some of the owners that want to do too much, like because it's like a little an ego trip, and we need to try to tell them, with the help of consultants, please try to look at that. Don't build a 5-star, it's a market for a 3-star. That we don't have these discussions with some of the guys that are really sophisticated and understand why they doing an investment. But I think that's a particularity of our industry, is that for investors, it is a good tool.
Mm-hmm. I would just like to clarify, in terms of hotel investments in this region, they have been subpar in terms of returns to other asset classes. But if we, of course, move out of this region to Western Europe or to America or to some other countries, in terms of returns over time, hotels have been on par and maybe sometimes even case superior because they have the upside potential that other asset classes don't. But definitely the storytelling aspect of a hotel and architecture is much more prevalent than in other types of properties. Of course, there are some office buildings in New York and London where you have big atriums and you don't care about add-on factor, you don't care about efficiency, you're just building something as a monument. But in hotels, this is a much bigger part of the story than in other asset classes.
It also comes down to what's the exit plan. You know, it's quite clear what an exit is for a pension fund and for how long that exit is going to be. Yeah, it's very clear in mature markets what the exit is, and it's very clear for some of the big hotel owners that they have their 5-star trophy asset that's never going to be sold. That's where they do their deals, and they're going to sell and buy the other hotels around. In this part of the world, I'm beginning to see more and more, like yourselves, for example, and other companies that have ambition to build and have more than 1 or 2 hotels. That includes families who may have a son and a daughter. It sounds old-fashioned, but it's the father and then the daughter's having one, here another one, and then it moves on like this, and then there's a legacy, then it's taking over. Then there's another couple of hotels, because they're starting to think about, this is a business now, this is an exit. And we need to be branding these hotels. We need to have some really optimization of the operation here, of the EBITDA, so we can look at what we're doing. And that's a very simplistic way of saying it, but that does now appear to be happening. I've got people coming to me in Romania talking about 2 or 3 hotels, not just 1 hotel to begin with, which is great. Sign. Where can I sign? So, but that's what but because they're saying that's the end goal. That's what I'm trying to achieve. How can I achieve that? And I agree with Christian on the conversions. It's not only because there's a lot of older stock out there. It's a quicker to market for us. It's a quicker to market for the owner. It's a quicker return of the lending for the bank. It's quicker for everyone. And it's than the previous panel, Frank McCall was talking about regenerating old assets. It's absolutely the case as well, that you're not necessarily going to get funding for huge greenfield developments. It's going to be, and also these large mixed-use developments you were talking about, they're still quite scarce because of the scale and the funding required to do so. So those conversion opportunities, and if you go to the Croatian coast, I mean, throw a dart and you'll find one, but it's not easy there. And we all want to do it, but we have to unlock it. But certainly that's for us the most commonsensical approach at the moment, is the conversion. and that's why we had introduced this Radisson Individuals brand. We signed 2 in Bulgaria there. They were open within 6 months, and 1 here in Belgrade as well. So, you know, it gets you to market quicker, and it gets everybody earning money quicker.
I see that everybody has very quickly adopted to the new, let's say, terms of the market with establishing a new brand basically, and then establishing, adapting to what the market is providing basically, and using the opportunities. And that's of course important because either you adapt or you die basically. You cannot stick with the old business model all the time.
Hospitality is a really old industry, a really old business since the inn, I guess, from the Bible, you know, the first ever inn. Wasn't a park inn then, but never mind. But we always have faced challenges. We've always had these things where, oh, offices are better, warehouses are better. No, you're not flexible. Airbnb is going to kill you. You know, Booking.com is going to kill you. No, we're still here. We're still here, but we're adapting, we're improving. We learn from each other as well. We learn from what the guests are telling us. We learn from other asset classes. We learn from owners. We listen. And I think that's the great beauty of having a business like hotels, is that it's very much a collegiate people business, because at the end of the day, the people using it are hotel guests. And we always find a way to adapt and improve.
I may jump just on one thing is crossed my mind. I mean, we've seen absolutely astonishing development in the past 6 months or a year in the region, and probably a lot of new hotels in the pipeline, and it's great that the operators are introducing new brands and tailoring the needs. But what's also important is to also take care of the current brands, because they need to evolve, they need to adapt, and they need to adjust to what has been changing. And because if this is not happening, then we'll see this dichotomy between the new and the old owners. Basically, the old owners will be theoretically stuck with kind of brand which has been there for 10, 12, 15 years. Even if it's a proper investor investing in the property, really looking forward, if his or her hotel lags behind the new ones, or all that there is new, both in terms of a design or a brand or a strategy, then we might see some troubles in this relationship between the owners and the operators. And we as an owner have been really pushing our operators to really think about the brand and the whole vision of a brand, which has been there for a long time, but it also needs to adapt, because if this is not the case, then the new brands which are there will just take, they'll be much more appealing, and then they'll have bigger scores, but then you invested so much a lot in the old brands in the past, and it will be a waste if this is not happening.
Let me open up now the panel to some questions, if anyone has any.
Everything's clear.
Excellent. And so the message from this panel is hotels are here to stay, basically.
Hotels are here to stay.
Thank you very much.